Hi everybody, this is John O'Brien with California Credence at californiacredence.com. So today I'm going to review a little bit about Photon2, how to assign MIDI controls, momentary and continuous controls to the live panel. And then I'm going to be moving from there to programming a light show using an amazing tool called Logic Pro for iPad. It's really cool. So those two things, Photon and Logic Pro, are two things I'm going to go over in this video. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first, before we get started, if you're wondering how I'm moving things in Photon, that's basically because I created a patch on my montage called Photon Control, and then I'm going to be using some of these knobs and faders to be able to adjust things. As far as presets that have immediate flash kind of lights, that would be the keyboard. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started and dive into this. Okay, so a quick overview here is looking at the control panel here in Photon. You can see that we have a bunch of buttons here, and if you look at each one of these buttons, they have something to do with what we programmed in the devices. Now, these devices, when you take a show and you import it or you export it or airdrop it onto another iPad, like this one is a nice iPad, a 12.9 5th gen iPad Pro, my custom devices are not going to turn up there. They'll show up in the show, but they will not be something I see in the custom devices. You will only see those on the original iPad that you set them up on. So these are the devices. Once we have the devices in place, then the next thing you would be looking at are the groups. And if you create groups, then this is what this is. The various groups are going to be giving you all the controls that are embedded in the group. You know, for example, if you hit something like this, you know, it'll turn on light, and then you can see how that light is then dimmed or made brighter, or the colors and such. And then you have these custom controls. These were all configured when I made the custom device. That's where we got these names. So that's just a quick overview on that, and you can look back at my videos on how that took place. So that's basically what we're looking at with the control panel. And then these control panels will go to this live control panel, and that's where we have this. So if you look at this control panel, if I do an edit and I show you what I have here, let's say, for example, I have a momentary light. I set up this thing where it's a red-blue, which would equal a purple. And you can see that I have it locked so it can't be disabled by a solo button, and it's a flash. We can see that the MIDI mapping is that it is controlled by F3. So the question is, how did I get that? And that's what I'm going to show right now. So I'm going to give you an example of adding something, a continuous controller and a momentary controller. So let's start out with, first of all, a momentary controller, which would be a button. And I'm going to say, I'm going to put it on one of my par lights, which would be, let's say the guitarist is on the left side, and so this is going to be a band LED, and I want it to be a, let's say it's a red light. That's how I would assign the red light. So I'm going to make this button trigger a red light on the par light, and then I'm going to make it a momentary. I like the flash. And then what I'm going to do is, if I do solo, what that does is it will turn off any stuck lights that happen to stay on. So it'll clear them and turn them off, and then this will be on. Now that can create a problem if you're wanting to run two separate lights running at the same time to do a more exciting show. So that's where you would make this a solo light, but then those lights that you want to continue to function independently on those other controls, you would say locked and can't be disabled by this. This would disable a bunch of other lights and exclude any ones that you assign here. So I'm going to make this a solo, so it's going to shut off other lights. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a MIDI control, and I go over to my montage keyboard like you saw at the beginning, and I'm just going to go ahead and assign a momentary control. So all I do is I don't have to press anything. I just go to my keyboard and I hit a key, and here we have it. It's just really that easy. I like to set the color. It's a red, and since it's a light, I'm going to change the graphic. We're going to make it a light, and that should give us a really good idea on what we're looking at. And it just defaults to being up here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this, move it down here. I like to reduce the size of it, and that would be that. You know, we have that button there, and you can see that it's enacted whenever I press on the key. So let's say I want to use a knob or a slider and I need a continuous controller to make it bright or not bright. So then I would go ahead and I would come up here to, I'm going to add another thing, and I'm going to add a fader, and then we'll go to that band LED left, same thing, and I'm going to just go ahead and make this thing a dimmer. And we can see that it's already set to continuous because a dimmer would be continuous. So this is fairly simple. All we have to do is hit this, and I'm going to go back to my keyboard, my montage, and I'm going to grab myself a knob or a slider, and we can see that, oops, it's 29. I can see that that is not a number I want. That's a bad one to have because I already have that map somewhere. So I'm going to remove that, come out here, and then we're going to take another shot at it so you can see it's clear. So let's try another one, and I'm just going to do that. Hey, 89 looks good. That controller is going to work for me. I know it's not assigned to anything else. And since it is a red, I'm going to go ahead and give it an assignment. And since it's a fader, it kind of looks like that. I like that graphic. I go ahead and hit OK. We can see that it's up here, and for some reason they do that. They just default. I don't need a fader to look like a fader. I can live with it just being a button because I don't really look at this panel when I'm running it via MIDI. So that's how you do a continuous and a momentary, and then I just hit OK. So what's cool about this is I can go ahead and turn off all my lights here. And then now what I want to do is I want to have my red light. See, it's not going to be flashing any lights. But if I go ahead and use my knob or my fader, it's going to turn up that red light. And so if I hold down the key, and so being that it's a solo light, if I have a light that gets stuck, what it's going to do is it's going to shut off. So if I hit another light, you know, it will turn off other lights. And so that's how you can see how these, some of them are locked, some of them are solo. These, like, you know, need to function on their own. So if a solo happens, and then if I want to fully fade this out, that's basically how we do it. So that's how you set those up. And that's just assigning MIDI to your control panel. And the cool thing about it is you can assign multiple functions to a single device. Let me go into edit and give you an example of that. I have a fader here that's going to be doing multiple things at one time. So then if you look at one of these are a fader that controls multiple lights. I'm going to click on that, and what I've done is I have actions that were assigned to this, and there are multiple actions. So in other words, I have a dimmer and I have a color that's assigned to each of these fixtures, band LED right, LED left. So it's controlling all of these things, and it'll also control dimming. So this is going to have a certain effect where it's going to brighten or dim the color blue. And so it does that all at once. This is a continuous controller, and I have a controller assigned to that. So that's how you program a continuous controller and a light button. Be sure to engage in live in order to test it out. So that way you can make sure that everything is working well. All right, so we're going to move on to the next thing, which is going to be programming the lights into a light show using this amazing program called Logic Pro for iPad. Okay, so what we have here is we can create a grid. I'm going to drop this down out of the way here. If I tap in here and then I say create a MIDI region. So now what we have here is I'm going to tap on this and I want to hit edit and I want to show an editor. So we have this MIDI grid, and some of the things in this step sequencer are super powerful because we can take C3, D3, E3, G3, A3, and a D sharp 2. So this would be C3, D3, E3, G3, A3, and then D sharp 2. There we go. So what we have now is we have a operating grid, and this is where you get to test it out. So you'll see how fast that thing is clipping. It's like, wow, that's pretty darn fast. I need to slow that up a bit. And so what you're going to need to do is change the resolution of this. And I like to change it to 8. That's my favorite type of, because it is fast enough to create a good program. So let's just start poking in some values. We're going to maybe put in a C3. And then maybe we'll do, let's just work our way down. And let's just do a, we'll do a, and then something like this. So you can see how the pattern is going here. So what you can do is you can take the playhead and you can start it up here. Oops, no, I don't want to loop it. So we start it here. Now watch what happens, how this thing will go along with the playhead. So you'll see the lights go in time.
Guitar, solo, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So you'd be asking, well, why did it stop? Because it reached the end of the region here. So you can see that that region is good. So let's say, for example, I want to tie these together. I want them to stay lit. I don't want them to turn on and off. No worries. We can just hit this icon. See, it was on this, and we're going to bring it over to tie. And then all you do is hit the arrow forward, and that's just basically going to say, I want to tie these. I don't want them to completely shut off. And you can even tie these together to where they're going to stay on. And let's go ahead and tie this one, and then I'm going to note off on this red one. So now what we're going to see is we're going to see a little different behavior. So what's the power behind this is being able to create a show without having to sit there and try to poke things out live. You can actually plan out what you're going to do. Okay, so watch this.
Guitar, solo, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Again, it stopped because it got to the end. So what I could do is I can come up here and I could just say, hey, I want to copy this. Okay, and then I want to paste it at the playhead. All right, so I come over here and I click on here and I just say paste at the playhead. And then the other thing that I can do is click inside of here and I just say, hey, I want to convert this to MIDI. All right, because it's like, well, am I stuck in pattern mode? No, you can convert this to MIDI. And here's how you do that. I'm going to go ahead and convert this to MIDI region. And then the other thing that you want to really be careful about is multi-tracker will see these as different tracks. So what's always good to do, it's always good practice to take these, you just press and hold, and then it selects them all. And then what you can do is you can click on here and just simply tell that you want them to bounce and join. You have two choices, bounce in place or join. I select join. And now what we've done is we've taken that pattern editor and now we've actually created a track. I can go ahead and cycle on that. So then it looks like this.
Guitar, solo, 1, 2, 3, 4.
And then when you have that one part that's where you might want this to actually finish out, take this and you can move these over here. So then what you're going to see is you're going to see something that looks like this. It might jive a little bit more. So let's do it.
Guitar, solo, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So this is one of the reasons why you can use Logic Audio as a fantastic tool. Once you're done and you create an entire MIDI track, you can actually take this and you can dump this or export it, and it'll say export, and then you can, training for Photon, you can just pick the MIDI, and then you're going to go ahead and share, and then you're going to set this to a location which would be save to files. And then this might be on my iPad, and you would want to stick it into multi-tracker if you're going to run it from multi-tracker. And so then you would find your Boogie Shoes folder and stick that in there and hit save. So that's one of the ways that you can use a lot of the programming tools. Now you might be asking, well, what if I have a continuous controller and I want to do like a fader? That's no problem, because what you can do is you can open up this editor and you can show in editor the automation, which is over here. For me, my turning up the lights is number 29. So I would go to MIDI and I would take this 0 to 63 and I want to set it to say 29 because that's what I control all my lights, right? So if we're going to go back to Logic, you can see that 29 then is what I'm going to plug in here, and I'm going to draw this in here. I'm going to maybe do some cool stuff. I'm just going to draw some lines in here. We're just going to be turning up and down the lights for this. Maybe not make it go so bright. We'll take this and we'll bring it up here. Bring this to here. So it'll start out with a little bit dimmer. There we go. So then what this is going to do is it's going to start altering the continuous controller, which would be 29, which is altering what the brightness is. So
Guitar, solo, 1, 2, 3, 4. Guitar, solo, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So you can see now that that controller is altering the brightness in addition with the rhythm. So that can add some additional effects. And again, you know, if you take these out and eliminate these, you'll notice that it will make this a little bit less sophisticated. I'm just tapping these buttons to get rid of them. You'll notice that it'll be a little less sophisticated and it'll just be 100% bright.
Guitar, solo.
So you can see how altering the brightness can also bring a little bit more excitement to the show. And then if you just go from here in back into your grid, you'll see your notes. And then you can export that MIDI, like I said here, and bring it into multi-tracker. So a very, very powerful tool. I believe that Logic Pro is superior to Cubase's 3. I think the flexibility and everything that's inside of it is really, really good. So what I want to do is I want to show you some of the pitfalls that happens with people programming lights. So here's one of the pitfalls that you're going to find. You'll program a MIDI program in Logic Audio and things will look very, very good. You'll do the light show in multi-tracker and it'll be like, hey, there's some problems that are going on here. It's not coming out the way that I thought. And that's where you're going to need to go into this and really start thinking about, don't blame multi-tracker, mainly look at what you're doing here with your settings, where you want to find out, okay, so I need some things to actually turn off. So if I'm jumping from light to light to light, I may need to set every now and then, that would be like these ones. These are all solo. So what they'll do is they'll kill other things, but then I have these things that are maybe locked so that they will ignore a solo. So if I want the box lights to function on their own, I want to lock those. And then if I want these red, green, blue, purple, and such, I want them to shut off the other red, green, blue, purple, and such par lights, but not affect these staying on. So that's why we have these locked, to ignore the shut off, but we want these to only operate individually. What that does is it prevents you from encountering locked notes. So then here's what you would wind up with then if you had multi-tracker, and we'll do Boogie Shoes. I'm going to go ahead and open multi-tracker. Now with multi-tracker, obviously there are two regions. That could be because there was a split somewhere or some different notes. You want to make sure that both of these are on channel 1. And then you also want to make sure that this is pointed towards Photon2 and not something else. And that's why that if it doesn't work, that's because this isn't pointed to Photon2. When you set this to Photon2, then it makes all of these go to Photon2 by nature. And then make sure these are all on the same MIDI channel. So now that we've loaded in these tracks, you will notice that we have the Boogie Shoes lights, that this was all done in Logic. And then so here's what it would look like when you launch your show.
Booger Shoes.
Intro, 1, 2, 3, 4. Guitar, solo, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Now I have these going to separate sides of the stage. They're not firing all at once, so they're just kind of moving around. And you'll see the box lights are separate, where the par lights are firing on their own.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And then there are different parts of this. So I think you get the idea on this. It's going to that. So when we get to the end,
repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, so we're getting to the end where
2, 3, 4.
it's going to end with a white light flash. With you, yeah. So anyway, that's basically how that track wound up from Logic Pro into Multitracker, which I do believe is superior. Anyway, hope you guys enjoy using Multitracker and Photon. They really are very powerful.